Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Currency of Anarchy. I'm Josh Davis.
I'm Thomas Shane.
And if you'd like to be a part of the discussion during our live tapings, check us out at youtube.com/user/Cur of Anarchy on on Mondays at 9 p.m., 6 p.m. Pacific. And you can see our final products on the air at youtube.com/user/Voluntary Virtues on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. And please check us out. So, Thomas, you have a guest today.
Yeah, our guest is going to be Markie Balentine. Markie, you want to say what's up? And yeah.
Yeah, what's up, guys?
Yeah, Markie. I heard of Markie. He's usually on the Voluntary Virtues Roundtable, which is what kind of started the idea of the Voluntary Virtues Network. It's started by the same guy, Michael Shanklin. So he was always a guest on there, and yeah, I just wanted to have him on the show. So,
woo!
Yeah. All right, today, so for the topic we're going to be doing today, I wanted to talk about police violence and accountability, and basically the myth of the good cop, the idea that not all cops are bad, because that's a common sentiment held among most statists, that just like any profession, there are going to be good people and there are going to be bad people, and that's obviously true. But from an anarchist standpoint, you have to realize that a cop, though a person may be a good or a good person in their day-to-day life, they may be a good and decent individual. The job position of police officer is inherently bad. It is in and of itself immoral. It's an immoral position because it's a position of illegitimate authority that is claimed without right, without any. It's just claimed by people. They're given these jobs by government, which is also illegitimate authority. So it's illegitimacy spawning more illegitimacy, and basically, even if as an individual you are good and you are moral in your day-to-day life, and even if as a cop you're not beating people, you're not murdering people, because we hear about that. If you head over to the Cop Block Facebook page, or you pay attention to any police accountability sites or pages or anything like that, you're going to see all day, every day, it's people being brutalized by the police. It's people being beaten, people being raped, people having their stuff stolen from them. It's just a horror show, and it's happening constantly. They're not isolated incidents, and it's not a rare occurrence. It's happening all day, every day, not just in this country, but all over the world. Even as a cop, if you're not engaging in that kind of activity, if you're not abusing your authority and your impunity for your actions and using it to, carry out your own sadistic tendencies or whatever, you're still a police officer, and police officers are extortionists. They're revenue generators for the state. They are, by their existence, an infringement on personal liberty and an act of aggression on peaceful people. They extort people for victimless crimes. Basically, yeah. The best, like Christopher Cantwell wrote an article, "The Myth of the Good Guy Cop," and he really nailed it right on the head when he said, the best case scenario for a cop, it would be a do-nothing tax leave. You would clock in, you would start your job, and you would park your car and go to sleep. You would still be being funded through taxation, which is theft. You would still be, they still issue tickets to people for victimless activities, which I'm going to go over later. And yeah, so just everything about them is bad, and it's just they're bad people. You may be a good person when you're not on the job, but as soon as you put on that uniform, as soon as you put on that costume and you hit the streets, you're a criminal. You're an organized crime. You're involved in organized crime. You're no better than the people that you're, arresting. So that's my perception on it, and I think that's probably a pretty common anarchist perception on it. It'd be pretty weird to be an anarchist and to like cops. But yeah, that's where I'm coming from. Josh, you got anything to say on that? What's your perspective?
I have nothing to add. That was spot on. Technically, I do have cop friends, and I don't want to say that they think of themselves as bad. They don't think. The thing is, with them, I've known them since since high school and everything, and we all grow up in the public schools and everything. But so they believe that they believe that what they're doing is good. But when you look at the overall picture, it's just the initiation of the use of force. It goes against everything we believe in as a moral people, non-aggression, property rights, that kind of thing. So our morals, as we know them, conflict with what they do. So I still want to consider them friends, but there's something that in the back of my mind, I'm like, don't trust this person. Don't trust this person. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Markie, do you have anything to add? Do you have anything to say about it?
The cops violate the non-aggression principle, and they violate private property rights when they do a drug raid. They're violating the property of the owner who owns the property, and they arrest them for victimless crime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So to go along with what you said, Josh, you said that you have cop friends. I've had cop relatives. No matter who you are, you know somebody or you're related to somebody who is involved in law enforcement or was at one time.
Yeah.
Here's the statist rationale behind cops, and let me reiterate: I'm not saying that if you're a cop, you're a bad person. And that's just the long and short of it. You're going to be a bad person until you die. I don't believe in good cops. I believe in good people who happen to be cops, and I think that's just a poor career choice on their part. It's poor. They just didn't. It's a lack of critical thinking about what they're doing.
Right.
But as soon as like I've said before, I have no interest in being buddies or friends with a cop. If you're in your uniform, I don't want anything to do with you. I'm not even going to want to talk to you. I don't even want to breathe the same air as you because I don't want to be extorted. I don't want to have my property stolen from me, and I don't want to be associated with organized crime. If you take your uniform off and you go home and you become an ordinary citizen, that's fine. Then we can be buddies. Then we can be friends. So I think you have to differentiate between when they take the uniform off, they are no longer an agent of government. Some people might disagree with that. I just can't bring myself to get into that mindset that all cops are bad people no matter what, because there are a lot of them who get into it because they think it's a good thing. They think that they are doing something moral and virtuous, and they are protecting society, and they are stopping the criminals, and they think that they're these heroes, these portraits of virtue and valor. And here's the thing about that: they uphold the law, and that's why a lot of people will say cops are good because they uphold the law. Legality does not dictate morality. Upholding the law is not always a good thing. Laws are just opinions backed by a gun, and laws are capable of being wrong. There are plenty of things that are legal that are immoral. Everything Hitler did was legal. Everything Stalin did was legal. There are things that are moral activities or are not. They're not immoral activities that are for some reason criminalized and made illegal, and that's the victimless crimes. I have a list of some victimless crimes right here that people are most commonly extorted for every minute of every day. Activities which, if you're unfamiliar with victimless crimes, I know a lot of our viewers are already anarchists or voluntarists, so they're already on board with this whole thinking. So basically we're preaching to the choir, but it's something I feel passionately about, and I like to talk about it. So here's some victimless crimes that I found, just a list of some things I compiled. Riding a bike without a helmet, base jumping from city buildings, purchasing and consuming recreational drugs, driving without a seatbelt, other driving infractions such as driving too fast or too slow, not using your turn signals, not having the proper licensing and tags on your car, assisted suicide, helping someone commit suicide who no longer has the desire to live, prostitution, tax evasion, gambling, certain forms of gambling, operating a business without licenses and permits, basically doing anything without a permit, holding a protest or demonstration without a permit. So basically, they've created all these laws and all this legislation that have criminalized all these activities that are being carried out by otherwise harmless people that don't equate to a victim. There's no victim that comes from any of these crimes. The only person being harmed by some of these, like the drug use and that sort of thing, is the people engaging in them. They're doing so willfully. So how is it, anyone's place to tell them, we need to protect you from yourself? So basically, they've criminalized all these activities that harm no one but maybe the person engaging in them. So.
Yeah, let me be more specific, Thomas. Like with your permits, if you're there is no crime there. It's just a money grab.
Yeah.
That's all they're trying to do. Like register your car so that we can. It's basically a tax. It's a theft. That's the only reason why you must have tags on it, really, in my opinion. Registering a gun, registering anything, a license to do your hair. It's ridiculous. Yeah, like what is that? In Louisiana, you have to have a license to be a hairstylist? Come on.
Oh, you have to have licenses to operate lemonade stands some places, operating any business without. And it's still a crime in their eyes to be doing something that they didn't permit you to do without first getting their permission, even though it's harming no one. It's still a crime to them, but it's exactly what you said. It's a money grab. It's extortion, and that's my biggest problem with police officers and the myth of the good cop. Because the best case scenario, the best cop you will come across is still an extortionist for the state. They're still issuing fines for victimless activities, harmless activities, and basically. It even goes further than that, because if you're issued, so say you're driving and you commit a driving infraction in front of a police officer, you haven't actually harmed anyone. There's a potential for you to harm someone, but there's no victim until there's a victim. So those blue and red flashing lights come on behind you. But essentially, what that is they're not just saying hey, please stop because I need to talk to you, about your actions and make sure that you're conducting yourself in a manner that's safe to the rest of society. No, it's basically as soon as they start to pull you over, they are threatening to assault and kill you, because if you just they just witnessed you do something that is in violation of some arbitrary policy. And they're prepared to do whatever they have to do to get you to stop, so that they can issue your extortion notice, and that includes running you off the road, and shooting you in the head or something like that. So you're issued these fines, so you pull over, you're given your extortion notice, you're given a court date. More often than not, the court is going to uphold some extortion on you. They're gonna say you owe us X amount of money. If you don't pay that, it's gonna grow, and eventually they're gonna issue a warrant. They're gonna come to your house. They're gonna try to kidnap you, and if you're not willing to, willfully engage and facilitate in your own kidnapping, they will assault and kill you. So basically, it's Here, I even found something that said the extortion. Extortion is generally defined as the obtaining of property from another induced by wrongful use or actual or threatened force, violence, or fear, or under color of official right. Markie, were you going to say something? Sorry about that.
Yeah, they will extort you, and if you don't follow along with the kidnapping, they'll kill you.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah.
What do you think, Josh?
So I understand. You were mentioning policy. That's right. It's like police are basically just policy enforcers. It has nothing to do with actual law, because in reality, law could be taken care of by private investigators, arbiters, in anarchy, of course. But even now, it can still be done the same way. Police are absolutely unnecessary altogether. That's where I was going with that.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I believe that they're unnecessary, and they're just they're actually the enemies of freedom, because the enemy of freedom is government. Government and collectivism are the enemies of individual freedom, and police officers are the jackboots of that government. They are the enforcers of those policies. Uh, they are the ones who they're the ones who hit the pavement. They find the people in violation of the policies, and they step on them. They stomp it out. They force you into compliance. They initiate the extortion, the funding for the government. So it's just, they're and this is why for me, talking to people who just absolutely love the police, even people that something that doesn't make sense to me, people who don't like government but they love the police.
Right.
That's like saying that you don't like Hitler but you love the Nazis. If you don't agree with government, how do you agree with their knuckle dragging policy enforcers and their revenue generators? They're just, it's just talking to people. Police apologists is just the most frustrating thing for me, because it's experiencing their Stockholm syndrome firsthand. So
I was talking with one of our friends. I don't want to mention the name just in case. But she was talking about how you are not supposed to, support the troops. Why would you support the troops if you're for small government? I don't like the policies of the army, but I support the troops. It's still all the same game. You're supporting people that fight against freedom, even though they say that it's for freedom. It's absolutely nonsense. And even if they were brainwashed into joining the military, well, try to get them out. You know what I mean? Instead of supporting them and what they're doing and what they believe in, how about you try to convince them to get the hell out of there?
Mm-hmm. I agree. That's the enemy. The enemy of individual freedom. It's the enemy of voluntary association, and you can't logically say that you don't agree with government, but you support troops and you support police officers and law enforcement. That's just another mechanism of government. That is government.
Yeah.
So, and I understand that a lot of people they make these accusations based on emotional appeal, because they know someone who's a cop, they know someone who's in the military, so they choose to ignore the facts and run away with this emotional misperception about what police do or what military does. And I know plenty of people who think this way, and some of them are friends and family of mine. And I don't, it's a serious paradox for me, because I don't want to be an asshole to them about it and just totally shit on their beliefs, but I want to be like, this is wrong. What you're supporting is wrong, and you're supporting it for the wrong reasons. You're supporting a farce. You're supporting an illusion.
A government is an illusion. Yeah, that's right. It's if you can break these people of this myth, it's like saying that actually forests don't even exist. It's just the trees that exist. We group them together and call it a forest. But we try to group ourselves together and call ourselves a republic or a nation. But no, we're just people, and there are certain people that are calling themselves rulers, and they say they have the moral authority over us. Well, where did that come from?
It's usurped authority. It's illegitimate.
Yeah. Markie, you got anything?
No, you guys got it all covered.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's just it's ridiculous that people. I just saw something the other day that it was a video that was talking about why so many violent criminals are on the street. And basically, it was talking about how there's so many violent criminals that are walking free on the street: murderers, rapists, child molesters, that sort of thing, armed robbers, that sort of thing, because police are too busy focusing on the victimless crimes. They're too busy focusing on the harmless activities, because those are the best revenue generators because they have the highest turnout with the lowest amount of work. So, the idea that people think that police are these heroes who keep us safe from the bad guys and the boogeyman and the people out there who want to hurt us and violate us. It's just a ludicrous idea, and it's just a ridiculous thing to say because they're not. They're not even focusing on those violent criminals. They're focusing on people like you and me. They're focusing on the guy smoking a joint up the street or the guy selling, drugs, voluntarily selling drugs to people who are voluntarily buying it, or they're too busy setting up. In my city, the cops in my city like to do crosswalk stings a lot, where this is a serious thing. They have one cop in plain clothes walk back and forth across the same crosswalk all day, and every single car that doesn't stop for him, there's a thug in a costume in his car waiting up the street, waiting to pull him over and give him their extortion notice. So, how is that keeping anybody safe? I walk everywhere and I use crosswalks. Sometimes people stop for me, sometimes they don't. I'm not being aggressed upon in that situation. So what are they, what's the deal? Where do they get off with this? It's just, I guess my whole point that I'm trying to make is how people can actually logically make themselves believe that police are moral, they're moral entities, they're moral people who are just, they're just doing the right thing, and they're getting violent criminals off the street, and they're making the world safer for you and me. How can you honestly believe that while you're looking at the facts of what they really do? Why do they have quotas then? Why do they have revenue generating quotas? Why are they setting up traffic stings? Why are they stopping people from engaging in victimless activities? How does that keep you and I safe?
Right.
It doesn't.
Yeah. Markie, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So, what is this your basic area of expertise, and if so, what got you into this?
Well, the concept of private property rights and the concept of anarchy, that what got me in this, and the concept of the non-aggression principle. Don't use aggression against other people. I don't aggress against you, and you don't aggress against me. Pretty simple.
Right. Yeah. Well, how did you come to it? Like, were you in the statist mindset for some time, or
Yeah, I
did
was
you?
in the statist mindset for most of my life, and then one day I was walking to the store, and then all of a sudden I was like, okay, anarchy means without rulers, we can still have rules. And then I finally got the understanding that anarchy doesn't mean chaos, and it means spontaneous order, voluntary interaction. It means,
Right. Yeah. Do you have any? Did anything kind of hit home? Like anything personal? If I might ask it, of course. Did anything personally affect you to come to it, or was it just like a light bulb went off, like you said?
yeah, it was a light bulb. It was a light bulb that went off.
Nice. So, and you were doing Michael's show for some time. Like, how long was that?
For a while, I've been on and off for probably a while, and then I learned a lot more as I grew into the movement and things like that.
Have you been to any events or protests or anything? Or
Uh,
did you leave that in the statist mindset and then like you just been doing chats now or
yeah, I just left the statist mindset and then just promote voluntary interactions and the non-aggressive principle and things
nice.
like
So
that.
do you have any specific um, subjects that you're interested in, like just currency, like that's my kind of thing, I guess. Currency is kind of my thing, but do you just do you focus on police? Do you focus on military? Do you focus on
I
any
focus on
special
the
subject?
government. I focus on the government itself. That it's just a simple illusion. It there's no there's no moral superior to the government. It's just an illusion.
Right. Well, that's awesome. So, yeah, I guess right now, if you don't mind, I'm going to go over the currency prices, and then I'll send it back to you, Thomas.
All right.
Okay, cool. So right now, these prices were taken at 9 o'clock today. Silver last episode was at 1967. Today it's at 1904, so that's about a 60-cent change. Gold last episode was at 1272.73. Today it's at 1252.70. So that's about a $20 drop. And Bitcoin last episode was at 585. Is that correct? I think that's wrong. Anyway, so and today it's at 670 about. Anyway, I just wanted to go over that real quick. So Thomas, you're up.
All right. So are we still talking about the law enforcement thing? Because I'm pretty
Sure.
much. Well,
You're
let's talk about something Markie said that he got when he was in the statist mindset, which I was too. Josh, I think you were too. I think most of us have spent at least a brief amount of time in the statist mindset. Mine was very brief. For the most part, I just wasn't politically aware. Then I became politically aware, and I thought I was a Democrat. And then I, you know, actually educated myself, and then I came to this. But that's a really common thing, is that the belief that anarchy is chaos and lawlessness. I was just explaining voluntarism and anarchism to somebody the other day, and they admitted to me. They said, I'll admit, that's what scared me away from the idea, because this person was a libertarian, but they were kind of just so about anarchism specifically for that reason, because they had.
Oh. Hold on, Thomas. Hold on. You got muted.
Oh, yeah. It's always associated with that stigma that anarchism is chaos and lawlessness, and it's not. And I explained to him it's rules without rulers. It literally means without rulers, you can still have social order. You can still have natural law. You can still have just people conducting themselves based on their own morality, based on people can argue about objective morality, but obviously the non-aggression principle that's a pretty good place to start, because even if you want to argue that morality is subjective, and that somebody might say that morality is everything, other people might say morality is not real. It doesn't. What matters to me, it might not matter to you. The bottom line is, we can all agree pretty much that like assaulting people and murdering people and like taking people's property or destroying their property is not cool, because if you wouldn't want it done to you, why would it be cool to do that to somebody else? Because obviously you find it morally unacceptable to be done to you. It's got to be a two-way street. Otherwise, I think that you're just full of shit if you're saying that morals don't matter, morality doesn't matter. So it's basically just, in my opinion, anarchism is a society where the social order is brought about by morality, not by legality. So yeah, what do you got to say on that?
Yeah, anarchy definitely doesn't mean chaos when you're out of the statist mindset. But when you're in the statist mindset, you think that anarchy is chaos and it's not spontaneous order or voluntary interaction. Once you're in the statist mindset, you'll believe anything that they tell you.
Yeah.
You'll believe that cops are moral, good human beings, and you'll believe that the government is doing good for the common good of everyone. For everyone, that the government is doing everything more.
I'd like to say, yeah, it's what I was brought up with was morality. I was raised a Christian, and there were a lot of things in the Bible basically that I did reject outright. But there were a lot of things as well that kind of rang true with me, and I never, I guess I never was introduced at all to or moral relativity and moral nihilism and all that. So I always just accepted objective morality and like throughout my whole life. So, but I was also brought up like, oh, we need police, we need the state, we need all this, and eventually, once I got out of college, like something just, I just finally started processing things. So I eventually rejected a big government. Like I always believed that the Constitution was the greatest thing in the world and all this other stuff, but I didn't like all these big government things. So once I got out of college, I believed in the Constitution again and the liberty in general and all this other stuff. But then something finally started processing, and with Stefan Molyneux, for example, I finally accepted anarchism outright, because it just brings together morality and integrity and honesty and all this other stuff. You just need it, and if you're honest with yourself, you're going to reject the state. But it is a belief, so it took a long time for me to absolutely reject it. That's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about it. It pretty much pertains to that too. It's something I feel about statists that's just kind of funny to me. It's kind of funny. It's kind of sad. Statists always support government and law enforcement under the guise of protection, right? Protecting the public and maintaining social order. So they think that by bringing this about, by sending men in costumes with guns to basically coerce and force everybody into compliance with what their opinion of social order should be, they're actually more of a threat to society, in my opinion, than an anarchist is. There's a saying, irony is a statist calling an anarchist a threat to society. And it totally is, because one of us is advocating, leave people alone, let people be, and let them live their lives and do what they want with their property. And as long as they're not harming anyone or infringing upon someone else's private property in the process, big whoop. Statists, the other side of the other one is the statist argument of saying, well, this is the way things need to be, so you need to go along with it, or we're going to have you kidnapped, thrown in a cage, or killed. So you tell me who's the real threat there. Who's the violent one? Who's the moral one? In my opinion, the violent one and the immoral one is the statist advocating government aggression on people who don't comply to their arbitrary policies. Anarchists just want people to be free and left alone, and statists are the threat to society. They are the enemies of freedom.
Right. Yeah, actually, I think that. What am I trying to say? I'm good at this. A moral person would not throw someone in a cage and call it love. And like when someone actually even more than that, we have welfare systems, right? And in order for a welfare system to work, you have to steal from others. And but the effect of a welfare system is to give money to those in need, per se. But in order for it to work, you actually need to steal money from the person receiving it in the first place as well, because that's still tax. You need to tax everybody in order for it to work. So, but we call it love. We're trying to help others in need, but that's what a charity's for. So the private sector, A, would make it more efficient. B, nobody would be stolen from. So it's coming out of the kindness of individuals' hearts, as opposed to the collective wisdom of the entire population, which actually, in effect, that's not what's happening. It's just some group of people wants to steal from everybody, and then in order for to give it the guise of good, you give some money out to some people. So, but it's not love. That's not love. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's moral to want to help your fellow man. That is a good thing to do, to make sure that people have enough to eat, make sure people have shelter, clothes to wear. You don't get any moral credit though for forcing others to do it at gunpoint. It's just not. It's, do the right thing because it's the right thing. Don't expect everybody else to contribute, and don't expect to be able to, threaten people with government aggression to do so. That just negates the whole thing, in my opinion. So. Markie, do you have anything you want to add?
No, you guys got it right on point. It's moral to help your fellow human beings, your fellow man, but it's not moral to point a gun at them, threaten them to do things, and throw them in the cage if they don't do what you say.
Damn straight.
Right.
All right. So Josh, did you want to transition over, and are you going to run that video?
Yeah, we can do it right now. The video you're about to see is an event that was held at the end of May by Tom Woods, and it was a pretty quick event. It was probably, from what I remember, it was about half an hour, 45 minutes. I taped the whole thing. I haven't compiled it yet, but you will see the whole video out at Cur of Anarchy at YouTube. So, yeah, please enjoy.
If you want to understand the American political lexicon, it runs something like this. If you favor domestic government intervention, you're a liberal. If you favor foreign government intervention, you're a conservative. If you favor both domestic and foreign intervention, you're a moderate. And if you favor neither domestic nor foreign intervention, you're an extremist. Yeah. And it really is true. You think of anybody who qualifies as a so-called moderate. That person supported the foreign policy of the last 10 years, which has been a complete fiasco even on its own terms, supported the bailout, supported every horrifying thing. That makes the person a moderate. But if you thought all these things were boondoggles and fiascos, that makes you an extremist. And I always want to say, extremely what? Like, I don't see why, if you could say, you want to call somebody, like a murderer or something. Well, I can see why that would be bad. Somebody's a thief. That's bad. But extremely awesome? That's okay. Extremely what? They never say. Just that you favor something extremely. But by that definition, all these people they favor extreme forms of intervention. I mean, what were the bailouts if not extremism? I mean, taking money, throwing it at super duper rich people, and saying that the economy is going to collapse if we don't do this. And even Rachel Maddow, right? She's supposed to be a progressive who cares about the common man and all this. She went on Jay Leno and said, if it weren't for the bailouts, we would at least after the bailouts, at least we have an economy. We wouldn't have had an economy. We wouldn't have had an economy. So people wouldn't have been buying and selling. There wouldn't have been property laws. And what does that even mean? But these are the moderates. These are the respectable people. So when I think about, I had that guy Matt Kibbe on my show, the guy who runs Freedom Works, and I was prepared not to like this guy because he works in D.C. and I just have this visceral prejudice against these people, and that's not good, right? You should be on your guard, but individuals are individuals, right? You're going to evaluate everybody one person at a time. So it turned out I actually kind of like this guy, but I asked him, do you have any issue that you just say, this is my deciding issue, that if you come down on the wrong side of this, that is it. There ain't no way I can possibly support you. And he's on the show, he's thinking, I think I had this reputation for being like a bad guy or something. I don't know where I got that. If you listen to my persona on the show, I actually seem pretty nice. But I think he was expecting me to, bite at him all the time. So he very gingerly said, well, I think the bailouts. And I said, ding, 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 that's the correct answer. On economics, the bailouts is the key issue. Now, of course, your key person on this is David Stockman, who has overturned every argument you ever heard for those bailouts. That the ATMs would have gone dark, and the money market mutual funds were going to collapse, and nobody would have been able to make payroll, and all this stuff. Like everything we heard, the economy was going to grind to a halt. he's demolished it in that great book, The Great Deformation. But the AIG thing is a great example. Every respectable person said AIG needs to be bailed out. Every respectable person, every moderate, every respectable liberal, every respectable conservative, they were all in favor of this. I mean, there was one Republican, I won't mention his name, but he ran for vice president in this last cycle, who got onto the floor, the House floor, and was basically screeching that the world is going to end if we don't support these bailouts. And Stockman has shown the whole thing is nonsense. In fact, with AIG, it was supposedly that their credit default swaps were going to blow everybody up. But it turns out that when you look closely at it, 90% of AIG is things other than credit default swaps, so that's not a problem. But secondly, who's holding these toxic assets, supposedly? Who's actually holding them? Turns out it's not any mom and pop institutions or local community banks. It's 12 gigantic institutions around the world, capitalized in the many, many, many trillions. And the amount they would have had to take a haircut on was like 60 billion, which is like 3 months worth of executive bonuses. I mean, seriously, that's what it was. That John McCain had to halt his campaign. We got to go and deal with this, and there was no justification for it whatsoever. And yet, every voice of respectability, every moderate, sensible voice was telling us we had to support it. By the way, in addition to being a moderate, if the media labels you a maverick, you're also a moderate. For the media, a maverick does not mean somebody who dissents from the political mainstream. Because we have very few people who do that. We know who they are, we love those people. But we have very few people who do that. John McCain is a maverick because sometimes he votes with Ted Kennedy. Like we look back at his old, like on education policy or whatever, or on immigration or something, that made him an unbelievable maverick. Well, what would that make Ron Paul, right? I mean, like everything he does is a maverick, but of course they don't have a word for him, so they just don't talk about it. All right, fair enough. When we're in a downturn like this, I mean, you know, technically maybe there's some growth, but it's all growth in dead-end sectors, really. It's all growth in government sectors. It's growth in sectors like education and health and sectors like that where there's a lot of government funding there that probably won't be able to be there in the long run. But Bruce Bartlett, back when he used to be a good guy, Bruce Bartlett had this great column where he reproduced a chart of the recessions of the 20th century. The year that they began, the year they ended, and the year that a special stimulus spending program was passed. And the stimulus spending program to fix the recession without fail is always passed in the year it ends or the year after it ends, repeatedly. So even if the theoretical arguments why these programs are unnecessary are unpersuasive to you, that chart, like I've got to find that thing. That chart is unbelievably telling. The thing fixes itself without doing this. So then you think, but I know I've heard there are a lot of cases where these programs have succeeded. You get a lot of spending, a lot of make-work jobs, and that gets the economy pumped again, right? It seems like we've all heard this. But when you look for actual examples from these people, what are your examples? Give me an example of an economy that was in the doldrums, and then you had these spending programs, and then it was doing well. And the answer they give you, they'll say, well, Japan. All right, well, Japan, yeah, right. So why do you know the history of Japan? They've been spending, hundreds of trillions of yen, just hand over fist. There is like concrete and steel poured over all of Japan at this point. There is nothing else they can build. And they have the highest debt to GDP ratio in the industrialized world. And you say, well, how could that be your success story? And the answer they come back with is, the economy would have been even worse if it hadn't been for this. I mean, that's all they can do is these contrary to fact scenarios. Okay, but since I can't get in an alternate universe machine and test this theory, I'm going to go with the more plausible scenario that this didn't help. Or they'll point to the New Deal. They'll say, look, the New Deal gets spending programs, and then it turned around. But you say, but it didn't really turn around. It was double-digit unemployment all through the 30s. And they say, yeah, but it would have been worse if it hadn't been for the spending. But again, well, I can't get into an alternate universe machine. And likewise, suppose it was reversed. So suppose it was, well, we let the economy alone to let the free market settle it. and we still had a lot of unemployment, they would turn around and say, hey, your free market doesn't work. They would not accept our answer as, would have been even worse without the free market. They would say, oh, come on, you apologists of the 1%, give me a break. They no one would accept that. But if we want to build up a cadre of people who aren't just going to cast a vote, but are going to be passionately dedicated to the cause, we have to make a moral appeal ultimately. And the moral appeal, to me, basically boils down to this. Some of you may have heard me tell this, but I'm really fond of it, and I'm in mind of it because this guy was a Harvard professor. And it's very, very, very infrequently that I can cite a Harvard professor and say, okay, listen to this guy. Robert Nozick, some of you guys may know, great libertarian. I mean, he had second thoughts later, but I think that's because he was under all kinds of professional pressure and just decided, to heck with it. I'm tired of not being invited to the cocktail parties anymore, whatever. My book is still out there for anyone to read. So anyway, so he writes this book, Anarchy, State, and Utopia, in 1974. And he's got this section in there, The Tale of the Slave. And the quick version of it basically runs like this. Imagine you have a situation where you have chattel slavery. You've got a master, a cruel master, who is horrifyingly cruel to his slaves. Like, he whips them arbitrarily. It's terrible. We all, I mean, anybody with any moral conscience whatsoever realizes that's deeply wrong. Well, then if we go one step closer and we say, all right, well, imagine, though, that he stops whipping the slaves, but they're still chattel slaves. Well, that's still, like, we would still be against that. Like, the whipping is not the fundamental problem with the relationship. Well, what if he then says, all right, not only am I not going to whip you, but I am going to let you take 2 days off. You're a chattel slave only during the week. So get off my case, you moralizers. Again, we would say, you know, I just don't think you're seeing the main problem with this relationship. Now, what if he says, all right, well, how about this? You only have to be a chattel slave 3 days a week. How about that? You can take 4 days off, I don't care what you do. But 3 days a week, you've got to be a chattel slave. Again, we would say, this is still wrong here. Like, there's some kind of mental block here. You're not seeing it. But now, what if the guy says, all right, you know what? I'm going to be a real sport. You don't have to be a chattel slave anymore. I free you into society. However, you have to send me a check every week for the equivalent of 3/7 of your income.
Those 3 days.
Yeah, the 3 days are still there. Now, what Nozick says, now there are more wrinkles to his version. What Nozick says is, at what stage did this stop being the tale of a slave? Now, his point is not to say that working and paying taxes is just as bad as chattel slavery. Obviously, that is not his point. He's not saying it's just as bad. He wants to know, isn't there something similar about the principle of the thing? Like, not every political leader is as bad as Hitler. But there are some political systems that have some things in common with fascism, and we should feel comfortable pointing that out without saying that, yes, they're just as bad as Hitler. No, I would rather live in the United States right now than in Nazi Germany, yes. I'll grant you that. But if the principles are the same in the case of the chattel slavery, and then later on you just have to do forced labor for, you know, Governor so-and-so, well, you know, it's still kind of an issue. And that's the kind of moral appeal that I think, at a visceral level, reaches people.
Markie, opinions on private property rights?
Yeah, the cops infringe on private property all the time when they do a raid on a home or somebody who owns the property. They raid and then they take the things also that violate personal property as well, because they're taking the drugs from the person. So they're also violating personal and private property at the same time. So
Very true. Yeah, when something that cracks me up is when police stop a drug dealer and they take all of his money and they take his car and they impound it and they sell that car and they take the money and they use all of that money and it goes right back into the police department, into the city government or state government's pockets. So, you know, basically it's moral to steal someone else's private property when you're a police officer, apparently, which
yeah.
I totally disagree with. But I think it's funny that, like, statists and cop lovers think that's funny. Like, when people when people get caught selling drugs and they get their stuff stolen. Why is that funny? Why is that okay? You know, that just because they were engaging in an activity you disagree with, that gives the police the right to, you know, take their private property, take their property from them. It's just total bullshit to me. You know, that's your property, and you have the right to do whatever with it
And
that
then
you want.
they'll use that money that they stole from the drug dealer, and then they'll just fund it right back in the government, and then they'll start it all over again. And
Exactly.
take somebody else's money, take another drug dealer's money, take a drug.
And hire more cops and send more extortionists out there to steal more shit from people, you know, and it's just a never-ending cycle. And the government is the ultimate infringers on private property rights.
Right.
They think they can come into your house at any time. They can take anything that you have on you that they deem, you know, contraband or whatever. It's, you know, sorry, you have the wrong pieces, you have the wrong herb in your pocket, so we're going to take that, and we're going to, you know, take the money that you have on you because you may have gained that through the sale of, you know, whatever. And it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and then they have Schedule 1 drugs that are on this list, and then if you have a drug that's on the list that's illegal, they'll take it from you.
Exactly.
You know,
Regardless
so
of
you
that.
gotta pay.
Yeah. Even though it's not harming anyone but you, maybe. But that's your right, because your body is your property. So once again, they're telling you they're not taking your property from you with drug laws. They are, but with drug laws, they are telling you what you can and can't do with your property. They're telling you what you can and cannot put into your body, which is your own property. And then there's the whole issue of the checkpoints, you know, the DUI checkpoints, the immigration checkpoints and stuff, which are basically just more revenue generation for them. But basically, and like the DUI checkpoints and stuff, Adam Kokesh just released a video not too long ago where he's in Glendale, California, doing going through a DUI checkpoint, and he's interviewing people. And it turns out that most of the contacts that they have, that the police have with people that result in arrest, or that result in them taking action upon someone, are for like they have a suspended license, or their tags are expired, or something with their car, something you know, they didn't pay the right fees or fines, or, you know, and basically they end up taking these people's cars from them and making them walk home. So they've stolen their property for no good reason.
Right.
So yeah, it's more just stealing people's stuff. It's men with guns and badges stealing people's stuff under the guise of law and order, and I don't understand how not every single person on earth doesn't realize that.
Well, can I talk about an experience I had?
Please do.
About 3 years ago, I let my registration on my car expire, you know, the inspection sticker. So that was, I'd say about 10 months I let that run. And I basically just didn't care. I mean, it really did come down to that. I didn't care, and in a way, I kind of felt a rush doing it. I'm going to admit that, obviously. But also, on my birthday in Massachusetts, your license will expire, you know, after 5 years or whatever. That's on your birthday. Your license will expire, so you have to get that done prior to your birthday. And what I did was I didn't do that. I didn't you know, renew my license. So on the day of my birth, cop pulls me over, sees that, you know, my inspection sticker was expired by like forever, and my license was expired by a day. I'm like, but I had the paperwork ready for myself to go to the RMV here. It's the DMV, same thing. So I went to I was on my way to the RMV. On the highway, cop pulls me over, sees that I have all this paperwork, goes to his car, and about 10 minutes later, I see a tow truck in front of me ready to pull up my car. So he's like, he's ready to have me walk, but I asked the tow truck driver if I could get a ride to the RMV, and he's like, well, that's fine and all, but I have to bring your car to my shop. So he drops me off at the RMV, and then, once I get all the paperwork done, I have to go to the tow company and pay X amount of dollars just to get my car released because I was over by about 12 hours. That's messed up. So there's my little story for you.
Wow.
That was about 3 years ago.
Yeah. That's perfect. That pertains right to what we were saying. That's a perfect example. Had your property stolen from you for what? Because you didn't have the right paperwork filled out in time?
In time, it's correct.
You know what?
Yeah.
If these tow truck drivers and these companies had any clue, they would refuse to help police steal property from people.
Oh no, it's free money for them.
But dude, I mean, if I had a tow truck company, I would take morality over money any day, and I would say, no, hell no, I'm not gonna steal this guy's car from him because he's in violation of your bureaucratic policies.
Right. Yeah.
That's
But
just-
they're required to by the state to do what the state says, though. So they had to take my car no matter what. Otherwise, they'd be up for violation of some statute. I'm sure.
That's where civil disobedience comes in, though. It doesn't.
Yeah.
None of that matters if enough people are willing to say no, we're not doing it.
Right.
They can't. You can't subpoena everybody. You can't arrest everybody. You can't summon everybody.
Right.
So,
that would be great.
yeah, I just hope that day comes. And that's another thing. Like I'm a huge proponent of tax refusal, but it's only going to be effective if enough people will do it. Because if there's just a couple people here and there doing it, that's just more money for them. They're definitely going to come after you. And I've talked to people multiple times that have said, I'm ready to do this when enough people are like, all right, now is the time. I'm ready. If more people are on board, and I'm one of those people. So anybody watching this show right now, if you're on board with the tax refusal, we need to get organized, and we need to get a whole bunch of people on board because if we can get enough people on board with this, there won't be anything they can do about it. So let's do it. I'm ready. You guys are ready. I'm all for persuading people and getting people to commit acts of civil disobedience. This is the biggest one for me. So
we have
paying the extortion fee.
What?
Say that again,
What,
Markie?
Stop paying your extortion fee to the state.
Yeah.
Use it.
Exactly.
We
Stop
have-
participating in your own extortion.
We have someone watching the show right now, a friend of ours. Don't know if he wants his name named, but he says that he has his family has a tow truck company, and I guess they don't have to pay attention to what the cops say. They can refuse the order, so that's a good thing.
Right.
Good stuff. I did not know that. That's my bad. But maybe it's Massachusetts, or maybe I just misunderstand the whole concept, which is great. I hope I misunderstand it.
Hey, good for you, man, and good for your family. That's awesome.
Yeah, good stuff. So I guess we could wrap up the show right now. Anything else you guys want to? No.
No, man. I want to say thanks to Markie for being on, man. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And so, yeah, information is the currency of anarchy. And, yeah, we'll see you guys next time. Our show will be now on Mondays at 9 o'clock. That's the live taping. And the airing of the final product is on Voluntary Virtues at youtube.com/voluntaryvirtues. So, yeah, thanks again, everybody. Take care.